Gotta go. Okay, getting in the groove for the show. And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I am going to make a quick announcement of as the intro launched, Facebook glitched, so I'm hoping that the networks on Facebook are getting this show. So it looks like I caught it in time and was able to fix it. So fingers crossed, everyone's here. With that being said, I know the joys of live shows. I am so excited to welcome back one of my favorite guests from last season with you all. And I'm sure you all totally remember her, so I'm going to skip the long intro and just say welcome to Meredith Herrenbruck.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really, really glad to be back.
I'm excited to hear what you've been up to.
Well, so since the last time you and I chatted, which was really transformational for me, actually, because we were talking about ghosts and some of your experiences. And I think it was maybe backstage post production, if you will. We were talking about your experience where you had some sort of sensation on your arm, which is pulled back when you were investigating a property at night. And I had seen in my mind's eye all these symbols around you. And it really took me aback because I'd never seen that before for a person. And it really got me into a deep dive of figuring out and just sitting with what happens with ceremony, what happens with symbols, what happens in various religions. Is it just an action, whatever the various parts that they do? And so I just sat with it, but it really blew my mind. I go, wait a minute, there's even more to this universe than I knew, which is more than some people know, but there's so much more to know. So that's kind of what I've been doing, and really launching a lot of things for my business as well. I think because of it. So it just really aligned to me in a great way.
Well, I'm glad I could be a small part.
You have, you
No,
have.
I remember too when you were like talking about the symbols around, and I was like, symbols? I was like, I started getting curious, like, wait, which kind of symbols? What symbols?
Yes. And so what I saw around you was um, two or three layers of symbols, and they were different colors. One was a yellow symbol yellow layer, And there were tons of them around, and I couldn't really distinguish a lot of them. But if I kind of think back, I could probably draw them. But I go, wait a minute, there are tons of symbols around. And then there's one that had more of a reddish purple hue. And it really got me to thinking about um, Reiki. They use a lot of symbols. I mean, a lot of religions forever have used symbols. And so are symbols discovered? Are they created? Is it a combination of both, right? Where you create a symbol and you draw attention to it and you create awareness and you're manifesting a specific action and energy around a certain symbol to be used. Um, and so I just, it really got me thinking into more of the symbols that I grew up with, with Christianity. Well, does baptism really do anything? I mean, other than make you feel good and maybe part of things and so forth, more from the egoic standpoint. But what are the other layers that are touching upon as far as physical, mental, emotional, and then spiritual? And I'm kind of leaning much more towards, wow, when you have a very powerful person who's very focused and honed in and produces and creates a lot of energy and or draws a lot of energy from the universe, maybe angels or whatever other forces they might be aligning with, I go, it just makes me feel that when you have that person working for you, um, how does that affect your life? How does that improve your life and support and protect your life?
Yeah, those are good questions. And one of the interesting things I was just thinking about is I don't remember if I mentioned that I did Reiki all the way up to master, which is 3 levels, which is ironic since you say you saw 3 levels of the
Oh,
symbols. But I also took Huna and learned some Huna, and so there would be symbols from there. And so it's interesting how you're saying the 3 layers, and I'm almost wondering, well, Reiki probably has a layer, Huna has a layer,
mhm.
and going, I wonder what healing modality I learned to be that third layer.
And I don't know, but it's so fascinating where you just go, wow, all this stuff does something, and the more I have learned to hone my skills, and I'm still obviously developing them, we're always learning, but I just go, so level one of anything, um, energy 101 is, oh, I'm a being uh, who maybe reincarnates or what, but I actually matter and I influence the world around me in some small way or big way. And that's a big thing for people to grapple with, because I think a lot of us are taught to not matter. We have to listen to authority and do what other people say, et cetera, et cetera. And we don't find really our true identity. And when we start to go, wow, who am I? How do I matter to myself and those around me and the things around me with my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions? And then you go from there into, mastery, where you are working with symbols and beings to make change or to bring, things into the universe and into light.
Right, and I think it's important, and I like how you put it, and the way my mind was picturing it as you were talking was, yes, we're born outside of this box image. Then we go to school, and society teaches us how to fit into the box. And then we figure out, well, once we're in, how do we stay in the box? And then it's like, I remember a movie, I forget which one it was, but it was Amanda Bynes, I think, was the actress star. And she's in Britain, and her so-called boyfriend at the time, because it was an on and off thing, goes, "Why are you struggling to fit in when you were born not to fit
Mhm.
in?" And it's like, wait, yeah, we're born not to fit in? Why do we take our life and spend so much time fitting in when we're born not to fit in?
Is very true. And so many years I tried to fit into a box. Um, and why we try to do this is because we want to connect with others. We want to be similar enough to others to have relationships, friendships, feel safe, have that community aspect. But sometimes it can really be oppressive. And that community is saying, you can't think outside the box. And it's unfortunate that so many societies do this knowingly or unknowingly, because when you squelch someone's creativity or curiosity such that they stay within the box, then you're slowing down progress, you're eliminating progress, and you could be creating a new invention or a new way of thinking that would solve so many problems. So on one hand, community likes to keep themselves safe and everybody safe, right? Everyone kind of hangs out by the fire and keeps the shadows and the boogeymen away. But at the same time, it limits our growth. And so for me growing up, I was just like, I got to be this way, I got to be that way. And then I just still sometimes it's a struggle, but then I go, but I am happiest when I am doing what I love. I am happiest and expansive and brighter when I'm connecting with people in a certain way and talking about certain subjects such as this. And we all do. We all have our subjects where we just light up and we expand, and the sky's the limit. But really, I would really tell people, like, kind of like the Matrix, like there is no box, right? There is no lower levels. Like the lower levels are to keep people in and stop from thinking and think that, and prevent you from thinking that you matter. Once you get past those levels, though, of all that criticism and shame and fear and anger and apathy, then you get into like the levels of integrity and personal accountability, which is a double-edged sword. But as you grow, you learn how there is absolutely no chaos in the universe, and that there's so many beings and energies out there really rooting for you to be absolutely awesome and do what you want to do. That helps support your community, yourself, etc.
I agree, and that's one of the reasons I loved the title of your book, is because I remember as I was learning all these modalities to try and fix something in me I thought was broken, to find out it wasn't broken, but I still gained a lot from it, that I was like, man, I feel awesome knowing this. And it is so awesome knowing what I can do, that, yeah, it's like I look at people around me and I'm like, why doesn't everybody want to find they're awesome and go through this? And yes, some of it is a little challenging, and there are days that you're like, my God, am I ever going to get out of this? But they're so short in the scheme of things that it's like, it's worth it, in my opinion.
I agree, it is worth it. And when a person is seeking to make their lives a little better, less full of drudgery and pain, people go through so many things in their life. One, kind of trying to deal with their parents. Even if they're the best parents in the world, we're still learning. Parents get tired. Maybe we're mistranslating their intentions, etc. So there's a lot of communication breakdown. And so we grow up kind of surviving aspects of childhood and learning a lot of skills. And then we go forward and we learn the ropes, so to speak. But very rarely do parents or teachers really teach you how to be who you are with integrity. Because a lot of people are just trying to fit in themselves and try to manage their own traumas. And when you have it generation after generation, it's really hard to have enough space and time and energy to look at awesome when you're just trying to survive, right? You're in a job, or you have a failed relationship, or whatever it is, or you're just, in trauma mind, or PTSD or chronic PTSD. And it's really hard to strive for awesome when you're just trying to get to the next step. And so that's the tools that I have bridge the complete broken down person, or someone who's even minorly struggling, but they go, gosh, I have this habit, or I have this phobia, or I have this dream. Um, and no one else has been able to help me. Uh, and I've been able to take that information and help understand finally what the root causes are that no one else has been able to find through NLP, through Huna, through Family Constellations, where I look at your childhood, I look at past life stuff, maybe entity attachment. And I've learned to kind of go totally off the deep end, but that stuff is real. I can't discount it, like you can't discount all your experiences of going, I don't know what it was that touched me, but that was something. And this is what happened, and you are curious. But I've worked with so many people who are just struggling to just go, I guess this is my lot in life. And I used to feel that way. I was banging my head against the wall, metaphorically. And then I go, there's got to be a better way. And when you finally search and you're finally open to just a minute amount of hope, then you're open to searching for it. And the crazy thing is, it's already there, but now your filters have changed such that you can now see it. They say when the teacher is ready, or when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's kind of how the universe works, is when you finally are open to it, well then, gosh, it's almost like right at your doorstep. And it's funny that way. And you're just like, no. And you call it coincidence. And maybe the third time you experience something similar and you go, well, wait a minute, that's just kind of odd. And then you go, huh. And then maybe I matter. Maybe that was done for me. And if you feel that inspiration or that curiosity, follow it. And it leads you to remarkable places, in which it led me to write my book, Becoming Ridiculously Awesome, which I'm going to plug right now. You can get at Amazon or my website. But this book is really a journey to help. It infuses my journey with how I can help you kind of untangle all where you are, and get to the subtle next steps. And they don't have to be big steps. They're subtle shifts, but they're perception changes such that those opportunities will be more available to you, because now you're in the mindset to receive them.
Right. And I want to take a quick moment, and there's a word we've been using, and it's a word I feel like people don't truly understand. And so I want to take a moment and ask, and if one, I'll share my view of it as well, and that is integrity. We talk about it, but you see a lot of people will say, oh, I did this with all the integrity. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I didn't see any integrity in the action that you did. How are you defining integrity? And so I'm just curious, Meredith, your view of what integrity means.
I think integrity means doing the right thing when no one's watching, where it doesn't, your action is not to fulfill your own ego or to get you ahead. It's where you understand your part in society and the world, and you're doing the best you can, so everyone kind of has a win-win. I think that's what integrity is.
I like that. And for me, it was always, I taught myself integrity. The first rule of integrity for myself was did I do anything this day when I go to sleep will cause me to feel ashamed, or like, why did I, bad about something, or, questioning something and going, well, did I put my best foot forward on that? And then if I went to sleep, I was like, well, I guess I did. I slept. So moving on to the next day, and I realized that that wasn't such the great barometer, because for me, understanding something, yeah, I understand how I think and how I operate. So it's fine for me to go, well, yeah, I could have talked to you better, but I slept on it. And, I get this and that out of it. Whereas in the moment, if I had stopped and said, wait a minute, something's not feeling right, I don't need to wait till I go to sleep. Let's look at this now and going, okay, my error is I thought you understood this about me, and sharing then, there and talking it through, I think you're right, is the biggest key to it, because a lot of people don't own their part in situations. They view that someone did this and now I'm upset about that. Well, how did that happen? What caused it? Like you're saying, what's the root cause? And a lot of times people don't realize a simple sentence they said could have been taken the wrong way, and all this just unfoiled out of a misunderstanding.
Yes. And you bring up many good points. One I wanted to jump on is that very few people understand how they play a part in their relationships or in their world. I think we're really taught, right, to make it okay for our elders and authority persons, whether it's in school or our parents, so forth and so on. And we're not taught to, again, know who we really are, because they're trying to figure themselves out. And they're also trying to protect their own belief systems. And when we come in with new belief systems or ideas, it challenges their old way of being. And, every generation has its kind of new ways of doing things. But I think I just look at America, and there's so much pity party mentality and poor me, and this sucks, and this person did it to me, and I got hosed. Yes, there is that happening. There's always going to be that happening. You're always going to have an employee do something not cool. You'll have employers do things that are not cool. I mean, everywhere there are going to be people with lack of integrity, and they all try and get the one-upmanship sort of thing. They will try and take advantage of you. But when we come from strength and learning, and it's hard to learn, you have to look at the mirror and go, this is who I think I am, and this is what I think I do, and do these beliefs hold up? That takes a lot of introspection, and a lot of people just don't want to do it because it's hard, it's scary. They don't know where the solutions are. They don't know that there could be solutions, but there always are. If part of you is trying to feel better, it's because innately your body knows that there is a better place to be. But I am very disheartened, and this is what keeps me going, though, is that people are taught to remain victims. But you can't have a really strong country or a strong family or a community if everyone plays the victim card. And just the more and more I think upon it, I go, I want to empower people. I want to teach them that they have choices, that there are all these root causes hidden in really interesting places, like past lives or entities, but those things can be shifted and let go of and reconciled. Stuck family histories can be reconciled now, even though the original pain was 2 or 3 generations ago, because time ultimately doesn't exist. But I really hope for people who are seeking whatever balance that they can, with this podcast, with what you do. There's so many people who have been in the trenches. I have been like crazy, which you can read about in my book. But when I found those, I call it the ribbon of light. When I would find those nuggets, they would guide me to that next step. And they would guide me to that next step. And I think that does happen for everybody. But you have to be a little bit more self-aware and go, I might not know everything, but there's got to be something. And trial and error, but then you find that right path for you. And then once you kind of hone in on it, on that feeling, that sense, you go, oh, wait a minute, I think this feels really good. And you start following it. And then the doors start opening and unfolding. So, but you have to be able to look at yourself and not be a victim. You can have had something bad happen to you, but it doesn't mean you have to remain in the victim seat forever, because that won't get you anywhere.
I agree. And one question I have for you, and I'm feeling like you've gone through this as well, is when you come through the other side of the proverbial tunnel of self-discovery and you realize your part and stuff, and like, for example, addiction on some level, you realize, hey, this may not be an illness limited to this life. It could be something more, and I'm going to go look into that, and I know once I find that root, I can change it and it's gone.
Yes.
But I see organizations all the time that are like, yes, we're going to help you through, your addictions and everything. And just know this process is going to take your entire life. You'll never fully be rid of it. And I'm like, it pains me to hear that and see that. But at the same time, I don't know how to help to bridge the gap to say, look, here's another way.
How do you bridge the gap? I think you just need to be super clear of there is absolutely a better way. And I've myself heard about various therapists of, oh, it's going to take years and years. I knew someone who says, oh, you might have to go to therapy for 10 years before you get an epiphany. Then I was intimidated by this person's comment because I was new to NLP. And there were certain comments about NLP, and I go, now I could absolutely laugh at that comment. Absolutely laugh, because I've had so many clients with 3 or 4 sessions. For the most part, whatever their issue was is mostly resolved, because we found the root cause and we changed our connection and association to it, or we let go of the entities that were stabilizing that experience. And when you kind of uncover it, you don't have, see, the thing is, a lot of therapy is you talk about it. You talk story and you go over and over and over again. At the end of it, you're like crying, you're upset, you're like, oh my God, it's like ripping the Band-Aid. You might know more about yourself. I'm not saying they don't help at all. There is a lot of, I would imagine, and I've been through therapy myself, so I'm not speaking as if I've never been to it. I mean, there's so much they do know in the field of psychology. But what gets me is there's the talking about the story and knowing about your history, and finally maybe facing what your history is, which I think is big for many people who have been in traumatic experiences. As a side note, because just seeing something, noticing it, or bringing your awareness to something that was truly horrible, shining the light on it often does create a lot of healing. I don't know if it creates everything, but just bringing your awareness to finally see and be present with whatever happened is a very big step. But getting back to this, it's going to take 20, 30, 40 years. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. Now you might feel most of it and have some nagging things that, it's like sweeping a beach free of sand. You might be able to get 99% of it. There might be some residual things, but I think if you keep honing in on past lives, childhood stuff, and really being open to what you're noticing and where your awareness is being held, I don't see why you can't pretty much clear it up where you're not dependent on someone else forever and ever. For me, I don't want people to be dependent on me. And I go, I don't want you to see you for a year. I want to see you for a few months, one session a month for a few hours. And then you'll integrate and see how things go, and your brain will shift and all that. And then you should be pretty good to go for whatever subject we're working on. That's how I think therapy should be. To have any organization where you are dependent on them forever raises my awareness. And I go, why? Well, it seems like maybe they need you to be in trouble forever, right? I don't think the body is meant to be sick forever. Do you?
I don't. And one experience I can share with you, talking about psychologists and everything, is I was dating this girl and she was seeing a therapist, and she came to me and said, my therapist wants to meet you. And I'm like, why does your therapist want to meet me? I'm like, well, what have you been talking about? And so I'm in there and I'm guarded because I'm like, I've had my own past deals with dealing with therapists and around our family. So I'm a little guarded. And the therapist starts talking to me, and my mind goes, they're using NLP. And I smile, and I'm like, I know this game. And my mind turned it into a game. And so I started using NLP back on the therapist. And she looks at my ex-girlfriend and goes, I really like this guy. He's really good for you. And I'm like, I'm wondering, do they even realize they're using NLP? Or, it's like, or is it so new that they don't realize that they're using it?
It's a really good question. And I don't know. I mean, it might have been where over the last, was started in the 60s, I think, 70s, that over time enough of the languaging has kind of infiltrated perhaps a little bit. But I think that's great. And no doubt you're building a lot of rapport and backtracking and all of that stuff. So you're like, yeah, no problem. This person, this is great. I think some of that has probably just infiltrated because it's effective. And why NLP is so awesome and effective is because it puts you at the heart of the matter. It puts you front and center and going, okay, so what would you like? What would having that do for you? And you're trying to flesh out the future and then go, okay, well, why can't you have it? Basically, what stops you from being able to go after it? And then you're looking all around, and then you do eye accesses and so forth, because our eyes are connected to our thoughts and where it's being stored in the brain. So if we're trying to create a future, but we're not able to, it's because we have an obstacle, something that we have put in the road to say, this is not safe, this is not okay, someone told me I shouldn't, or something happened to someone, or I'm going to lose out on something wonderful like love from my family if I do this, if I create this future. For example, many parents want their kids to be doctors and lawyers and so forth and so on. But oh my gosh, if you want to be an artist, they'll go, no, right? Out of love for their children, they go, I want you to make money and be successful. And, hedging the bets for artistry, that might be more difficult. Never mind how talented that person might be, right? But yeah, the thing I really love about NLP is you can have aha moments in the first 5 minutes. I can figure out why you're having your phobia in about 20 minutes, and fix your phobia in about half an hour. Because I know where to look. I know where where all the skeletons are buried, so to speak. And it's wonderful that these skills have been able to be discovered and found out through all these modalities that I use. That, I mean, why would I want to prolong someone's pain or anguish? I want to fix the problem. I want to not put a Band-Aid on it, but I want to go, great, this is what the problem is, and here's how we bring awareness. Here's how we bring love and acceptance and take away the entities, and heal your family's past, and so forth. And I've been able to help so many people in less than 3 or 4 months, where they change jobs and they're happy as a clam, or they're resolved within their family about, some long-standing family feud, if you will. So yeah, getting back to those companies where they just make sure that they hold the carrot out in just the right ways, almost like a casino where, oh, but you need this, and oh, but you need that. There are certain religious orders that do that. Anywhere you'll find that. But how you know it's not the right thing for you is when you get your hair raised up a little bit, or go, is it really? And you go, I just don't know. Follow your intuition. I think we're smarter than we give ourselves credit for, because we've been told to be in the box, not have intuition, not use it. But the more you do, the better off you're going to be. Your body is a well-oiled machine. We just have to learn how to use it.
Right. And you actually give yourself more time than I do. I think for me, my little aha moment of it's time to move on is when I sit there and go, do we really gotta rehash this story again? Can't we go on to a different story? Does it always have to be the same story?
Right. Right. And like, you're even bored of it. It's like, I hear it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to care about it. And that's why the NLP questions are so effective. They go, okay, so what stops you? Where do we need to look? Where is your awareness being held? What still hurts? And when those questions are asked, the body language and the eye accesses just lead you straight to it. It's like this yellow brick road right there, and go, okay, so what happened in your childhood, or whatever. And then we end up rewriting your associations to that history, with new resources and acknowledgement and love and care. So, everyone has their wounded inner child at some level, but that wounded inner child can heal. But it doesn't help when all we do is talk about it, because we're talking about it as an adult. You can't heal unless you talk to that inner child and go, what hurts? What did you come away with in that situation? And what new information can we support you with? We never really do that to the extent that NLP does. In my experience, knowing, having gone to therapy for 1.5 years and spinning my wheels and just going, there's got to be something better here.
Right. And I just want to make something really clear right now, because of the way we're talking about the therapies and everything, is we're not telling anyone to go and quit cold turkey any of their therapy.
No.
We are just simply saying while you're doing that therapy, look at this. There are other options. And when you find one that fits, go from one to the other. Don't ever quit helping yourself cold turkey. And as we're talking with our experiences, we are sharing the modalities that we're using to help ourselves. And so I just want to be clear. Yeah, we're not saying stop all therapy and just change your mindset. No, there is work to be done with it. And with that being said, one of the things that I've noticed too from personal experience in our family when it comes to therapy is the therapists like to put the blame on someone else and say, oh, because they did that, that's why you're hurt. And it's like they don't ever sit there. I rarely hear them say, well, yes, they did that, but the way you acted about that, that's why we're here talking about this. You're part of it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Everyone has their part in every situation. What we come away with, how we feel about ourselves and the world, what we think about, how the world operates, how your safety patterning is created, right? Some people, for example, some people will have a really hard time having a relationship or even getting into a relationship. And it's because maybe they fear something or they're trying to keep themselves safe from something, which might be imagined or created and not necessarily real. But it's what you're saying is, what is our part in it? What are we bringing to the table to create that situation of unhappiness with us? It is easy to blame other people. But we have our own thoughts and feelings that are our control. And we have to kind of, again, look at that mirror and go, why am I thinking that? What are the assumptions? What are my triggers? Where did they come from? And own that part as best we can with, whatever stage of growth we're in. And the more we can do that, the better off our relationships will be and the better off we will be. Because again, that gets more into the integrity of how do I show up in a situation? Because if you're blaming everybody else, here's the thing. If you're blaming everybody else, the good news is you're innocent, right? Everyone's guilty. But when you're innocent and you're sucking all that innocence out of the room, well, then everyone is guilty and they have to always grab onto the blame, and then you're innocent. But then you can't be an adult in the room. You can't own anything. You're at the whim of everybody else. So it's a good news, bad news scenario. Does that make sense? So the good news is I'm endlessly innocent. But bad news is then I'm endlessly innocent. Everyone's guilty. So that means I can't control the situation. I will remain kind of childlike, if you will. I won't own any part in anything. And such that then you can't grow. And growth is sometimes scary. Sometimes it's marvelous. And you go, wow, I didn't know it wasn't really that scary on the other side of that mountain. But it prevents us from growth and being a complete self. And so when we play that I'm a victim again, right? And I'm pretty clear on it today, but it took me years to figure out because I would hide behind, oh, it's their fault and this happened to me. And yes, it did. And that's part of the healing process of finally acknowledging what happened. There is a point where you go, all right, well, what did I come away with? And what would I really like to feel about myself now? What would I like to feel about my parents or that person? What if we didn't have the perpetrator victim dynamic anymore? What would my life be like? Because when we're holding so much onto the past with anger and sadness and blame and all that, our brain is filled with occupying its world about that to survive that past. But when we stop needing to survive that past, then our brain can be more available to creating our future in the way we want. Because if we're healed, then for the most part, we can move forward with a little bit more excitement, and rather than trying to barricade the door from our emotions and anger and sadness and all that past stuff. So when we're filled and laden down with all of that, it makes it near impossible to create a really successful, happy, balanced future. So yeah, that's why I really talk about, how can we get people more into autonomy and making those steps. One thing I did want to say is, because you were talking about, we don't want to bash the therapist. Never bash the therapist. I'm just saying, and as I said, they do have lots and lots of wisdom. And if it's working for you, then fantastic. Of course, keep doing it. But if you're finding that maybe there's something else to bring your awareness to, that your intuition is already letting you know on, it doesn't hurt to be curious and ask questions and see if it's a right fit for you. These modalities, you might go, no way, that's a little too weird. And that's fine. But again, it's, yourself best. And, there are a lot of people who you can talk to guide you through the process if you're unsure. So that's all I'm saying. Like I do free consults all the time where people are curious about it. Talking about entities, some people don't really know what to do with that. But when I start telling stories about how I clear properties and, help people who are children or children's rooms, where they're scared for 4 years and that night they're finally sleeping forevermore just fine. Again, there's so much to know and I'm still learning, but I've got some good stories to share with, potential clients who like the stories.
And on those grounds, I have a question that just popped in my mind around that, because I have a friend who's constantly talking about a really dark energy that comes around her and like paralyzes her, and she does stuff like saging. She does stuff to clear, but I feel like the doubt in her that did it work or not allows it to come back some. And so I'm wondering what advice you would have of clearing out that energy. And it's gone to the point to where, of mythology like the succubus incubuses, that now, it's like people are starting to talk about encountering those, and everyone's first reaction is, well, once you get one of those, you're pretty much doomed. And I'm like, well, I don't know if you're pretty much doomed, but yeah, it is going to be a trial to get rid of. Have you come across that stuff like that?
I haven't personally come across a succubus or anything. I have come across some dark force entities who are very, very strong. It's not like, moving furniture or anything like that. I haven't, thank goodness, experienced that quite yet. I have heard, a male voice come from a room, from an orb that was photographed. But I did encounter what would you call it? Let's just say dark force entity. It's kind of my catch-all phrase that I've heard and use. There was a child who was afraid of his room, and it was, so I went into the room and the room itself felt fine. Now, what happens when I go into a property or a room, I just sense things. I get pictures on what happened on the property in the past. I'm drawn to certain objects and I'll ask about them. And I just let my intuition take over. Excuse me. And so there was, in this room, in a bin, a specific toy that was purchased secondhand. And it just felt really, really off. And I got information about the child who previously owned it and so forth. But then there was another energy attached to it. So there was the memory and like the energy attached to it. But then that allowed kind of a portal to happen. And this happens with a lot of things that people use a lot or love a lot. They impart their energy on it and their emotions, and other entities will be attracted to that vibration. So if it's super negative, you might get a super negative entity. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the dark force entity I didn't notice actually attached to the object, but I knew there was something going on with it. And so later that night, I said, look, I cleared as much as I could with Huna. And I said, I'm going to check in later this evening and see what's going on and see, what, if there's anything else that needs to be done. So that late that night, I went to bed really late, or I woke up in the middle of the night and I said, okay, I'm going to check in. And what I learned was that this dark force entity would come through a portal to this toy at night. And literally, it was like a ghost in the closet, or it was an entity in the closet there to scare the child. And so when I ended up clearing the energy from the toy, that diminished the connection. But then I had to get really, really tough with this one. And it was sticky. I don't know how to describe it. It's like it wasn't physically sticky, but it was emotionally and mentally sticky. And it was really strong. And it took me good half an hour, 45 minutes to convince it to move on. But so anyone who has difficulty, saging is, I think, lovely for shifting the vibration in a room. I don't know how much it does for really clearing entities out. I think Huna and that sort of work, and maybe Reiki as well, really gets to, hey, we're going to talk and really say, hey, this is not okay for you to be here. I come more from a mediating standpoint rather than, hey, get out of here and be really rough. I've learned firsthand that that's not a good idea. They don't like it.
I don't know why they wouldn't like that.
Right. Yeah. The corner of the room yelled at me and says no. And I go, gotcha. That scared the heck out of me. Just scared me to death. And I go, oh, okay, fair enough. I'm coming into your place. You've been here longer than I have. And I'm like, get out of the room. So I always go now from curiosity of, who are you? Why are you here? How long have you been here? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Is it for good, or is it for negative, nefarious reasons? And then if it's for good, I'll go, okay, if it's an ancestor who's maybe attached, I'll ask questions on why you're here and what are you hoping to do, and I'll offer some other options for them to connect with their child or whoever they're attached to. Rather than being attached, still offer information and guidance and love from a better place. And then if it's a dark force entity, I will get very serious though. And I will say, no, this is my job and you're not allowed here. And because I cannot be convinced otherwise, and I have really big, beautiful, amazing forces behind me, above and around me that I call upon, then they go, okay, I cannot mess with you. So when there is doubt, when you're talking about her potentially having doubt and did it work, I think it would be useful. Maybe I would love for her, this person, to talk to me. I could give her some guidance, or I could even do it remotely. But you do, as a person, again, have to stand in your power for yourself and for your space. It's important to do that, because then when other people or beings notice that, they will be less likely to mess with you. Doesn't mean you have to be a bully, does not mean you have to be a jerk and difficult and so forth. But when you are standing strong and you know who you are and you know what's what, then the bullies will not tend to bully you anymore. I have this phrase, you know, people will overpower you, um, or sorry, choose to become powerful. Otherwise, people will choose to try to overpower you. Again, doesn't mean to be a jerk or a bully, but standing in your power and knowing well enough on who you are and how strong you are and your resources, that will really, really help you in almost any situation.
That's really cool and beautiful. And one thing I learned from an organization that really helped me truly stand in my power the right way was we were going through an initiation weekend where you're welcomed onto the property, and the person that's bringing you on the property is a statue. They're a walking statue. They can show no emotion. They don't talk to you. They just guide you along the way. And it was like when I did that, it's like I realized, look, I am taking an authoritative state, standing in power, and I'm not belittling anyone. I'm not, putting anyone down to make myself better, and vice versa. I'm not putting myself down to make myself better. I'm just standing here owning space. And it was like, and how easy is this? And to go, I should start doing this in other places. Why are we only doing this here in this moment? And it's like that big aha moment going, oh my God, what? Why didn't anyone tell me it was this easy to stand in power? And this is what it meant. It doesn't mean like getting the gun or the sword and being like, okay, if you mess with me, I'm putting you out and you're done. It's like, no, that's not standing in your power.
Right. And you get out of playing the game too, I think we'll always get sucked back in occasionally here and there. But when you go, wait a minute, what's really the situation here as far as the victim perpetrator dynamic, which happens so many places. But when you're just standing in your power, then no one can overpower you. And thus the perpetrator can't be, or that person hoping to become a perpetrator, um, he or she can't do it. And they go, oh, you won't play. Okay. And either, the friendship or the dynamic just changes, or they go away and they'll try and find somebody else. But it is marvelous once you do it. There's so many steps until that point, but that final moment when you just go, I think I can do this. Then you go, wait a minute. It's like this crazy trick in the universe. You're like, how did I not know this before? It's amazing.
Right. And we're approaching the hour, but you mentioned something that I, from my learning, have not been able to figure out. And I want to ask you a question about it. Do you have a little bit of time to funnel one more question?
Sure, absolutely.
So you mentioned when you're doing your clearings and everything using Huna. I have never, in all of my experience with Huna learning, and I didn't go through all the levels, but the ones I did, it was always on healing the self. I never learned or heard of going, yes, you can use this to clear space. How does that work?
Goodness. The teacher I had, he is a Hawaiian Kahuna, and he always, all of his teachings were always about, we worked on healing other people and putting them in a hypnotic state and working with them on a table or a couch and bringing awareness to whatever they were feeling, and then having a conversation with that thing or those things, even if it's a feeling or a thought. But also the other teachings were about clearing property. And it, I think I might have brought more of property clearing to it because I did, I majored in architecture and I love, I've always intuited spaces, what seems to be working better, finding better than others. And so I might have even morphed it from, how do you heal people to how do you also clear spaces? Um, it's kind of the same thing. Where is your awareness being brought to? How does the room or the property feel? Does it feel like you're spinning? Maybe there's a portal. Does it feel hot or cold? Uh, are there memories? Does it feel like there's someone in the room or something in the room? And I'll use my intuition. I'll get pictures, and I'll basically get a map and images of what's happening. And then I go, okay, well, do you need to be here? Is this really the best place for you? Is it appropriate? If not, where do you want to go? Where's appropriate for you to go? Because maybe this family is, you're scaring the child. And I don't know if you want to do that. Again, I'll become kind of a mediator. And then I will work on convincing in the right way, not to harm them. I want a win-win situation. And I just keep working it out until the energy is gone. So if it's entities, I will have conversations and pull in other beings that would be useful, maybe their parents. A lot of times, ghosts will stay because they don't feel comfortable going home, meaning their parents had a lot of judgment and fear for their child. And they said, oh, if you go do this job or if you go do that, don't bother coming home. And those energies and those fears continue into the afterlife. So they get stuck sometimes in places. So I will clear energetically and have conversations with those entities. And then otherwise, energetically, if it just feels old and stale and there's just old history, I will energetically clear that through Ho'oponopono and putting blue light in all the rooms and various other things that I feel is appropriate and necessary. Does that answer your question at all?
It does, because I was originally picturing like going, because like I learned protection, and then how you put it on yourself, going, oh,
Yes.
so you're taking the protection, pushing it out, and making the house. And I was like, no, that's not. You're not using the symbols and everything to force something out. You're communicating with it. And so I think that's a great thing, because I think that's one of the things a lot of people are wanting. They say they're wanting to do, but they're not really wanting to do.
Why do
Is
you think they're not wanting to do it?
because I think a lot of times when they go, oh, I was so, for example, like EVP communication, they get excited they have the EVP, and I'm a little bit guilty of this myself. I'll go back and I'll spend like maybe 5 minutes trying to reconnect with who I got a prior EVP from, and if feel like it's not there, going, okay, I give up and move on. Where other people sit there and go, you know, you started talking to me last time. I really want to connect and really want to talk, and they get that conversation and they put in more time to get it. And so that's why I feel like there are those that just want to get the fame of saying, oh, look at what we caught, versus, oh, we caught this and then we went and caught more. It's like they want to stop with the initial.
Right. And then uh, you have to figure out, well, what's your intention for catching the EVP? Is it for, to show it off to your friends or show it off in some way, or just be excited about it? Um, in the beginning of my working on Huna, it was scary, dealing with these things like, is this stuff real? Is this really happening? And then you get into definitely the ego of like, this is really cool stuff, right? And you're totally into it. And then over time, I've learned to more, again, be more humble about it, because sometimes they can really mess with you, or they will get mad and you feel it, and you go, okay, I need to really reset myself and readjust my intentions. And when I come into a place or with a client with integrity, with presence of mind of trying to do my best for that person, it's not about me. It's never about me. Of course, I want to help that person, but it's not about for my glory or glorification. It's what does that person need, because they're relying on me to help them through this dark part, whether it's a person or an entity or a property. And I will not leave until it's done. And when you work with entities and ghosts and energies, it, again, as I say, it's a win-win. It's like, I want them to go to a better place. I don't want them to stay in the darkness. Why would I ever want that? And no one has to stay in the darkness. No one has to be in the evil realms, in hell, if you want to call it that, or whatever. You don't have to stay there. And so I like to ease the suffering of all involved. But they're very telepathic, One thing I wanted to finish was, they're very telepathic, so they know what your intentions are when you go in. They can tell immediately helpful or not. But if you're really curious to seek to understand, I think more people would find the EVPs, and better communications.
I feel like you're right, and that's a beautiful way to put it. And I just had a thought pop in my head about something we were talking about earlier, and I'm curious how your viewpoint of it is, like when we're working on our growth, and say we're at the bottom of a hill or a mountain, and we're like, man, that peak is way up there. We do the work, we get to the peak, we look down and we're like, man, I can't believe I finally did this. I'm done. I reached the top. You turn and there's another peak. And you're like, how many peaks am I going to be going up? When does this end? And going, is it even worth keep going? Because it's just, if I get to the top of that peak, I know there's going to be another peak. So why even put the time in? So what would be your advice or thoughts to someone who's experiencing that growth, crisis growth of going, I've come this far. Can I just stop where I'm at? Do I have to keep going? Because it's just never going to end mindset.
Yes, I've certainly been there many times. What I've experienced is when we're starting out on the really heavy lifting and the really moving the big boulders, right? Or we're doing big steps, and it's hard and laborious and emotionally draining. And we are, and our current world is reinforcing all the stuff we're going through that we don't like. Our peaks will be designed by us, the person who's in pain. And so that peak is created based on that original intention. Okay, and what I mean by that is, so once you get to the top of that peak, you're going to go, oh, there's another one. But each peak does get more refined, and you're still climbing. And I think we're always going to be climbing and refining. But when we get high enough, it becomes less effort, less drudgery, because we've achieved so much greater calm and ease and happiness. and you're refining your intention on what the peak is. That's the other thing, is if you're feeling it's drudgery the whole time, no matter what, then maybe you're not going for the right peaks, is my thing. The first few, I think, just hard, right? Because you're really doing a lot of paradigm shifts. You're shifting your mental state, emotional state, you're cleaning out your life, maybe physically, all of that stuff. And it doesn't, that's not overnight, but there should be a point, in my opinion, that it gets to be like there's some perks along the way where you can have a plateau for a while and you don't have to climb to the next peak. You can always stop. The universe is never forcing you. It just says, well, if you are believing a certain amount of rules, or you think the rules are this, and you keep beating your head against the wall, then maybe you're assuming these rules are the rules, but they're not. Because when you refine to a higher level, you'll find pleasure in what the rules are, like the universal rules. And it becomes more fun, and you realize that the world is always with you, and that whatever you believe, you create. So if you don't like what you're creating, then you got to shift your beliefs. So if you keep having a hard time and it's not easing up in any way, then I would reevaluate what your goal really is and what your intentions are. And really looking introspectively, and or even giving me a call, I'd be happy to help.
That's actually really good advice, because my advice was going, I was thinking as like, how would I answer the question, and going, you're going to get to a point where you can stand at the peak and go, I can choose to climb this peak, or I can jump 3/4 up, climb the rest of the way, or just jump to the top. And that's when you realize you're growing, is you realize you don't have to climb and do all of this. You can jump and skip ahead. And those
right, because you're stronger.
10 miles high, you can jump and make it like a 1-foot step and going, done. Man, that wasn't so bad. But yeah, I like your approach a little bit better, because mine, I feel like, might be a little more panacea, kind of trying to skip ahead and maybe not do everything that you're supposed to be doing.
Sure. Yeah, sure. There's like, hey, is there an easier way? And sometimes there is. Again, which modality works for you, for your needs? Um, I'll say this. I remember I was on a retreat a few years ago, and actually it was last February, and there was a lot of hiking. I don't really like hiking. I mean, I'll do a few miles, but hey, doing a 9-mile hike is not my idea of fun. And I remember this one woman, and we were going up this really steep grade for an hour. And I'm like, oh, and slowing down. But so I slowed down, made smaller steps. I paused a little bit more. And this woman, she was in awesome shape. I'm like, wow, that's fantastic. And I had all admiration for her, because she kept running that mountain. And she goes, this mountain's always going to be hard. And I go, oh, okay. But what was so awesome about her saying that was that I was putting all the pain on myself and just looking at the mountain for what it was, right? It was strengthening me. It was strengthening my mind and my body and everything else. And it's always going to be like a whatever, say 50% grade or 40% grade. It's not going to be a 1% grade. And so it's going to be challenging. So again, if you don't like the mountain you're climbing, change the mountain. You can manipulate it. You can change it. You can change your goals, make it a smaller mountain, right? And that's where, again, it's like, let's get out of that victim and let's be empowered and go, how do I want to create my world? And if that's too daunting and too big, then let's make it a smaller mountain, or I'm going to go to half height, and maybe it'll take 3 days and not 2 hours. You can manipulate whatever you want to make it work for you. If you want to climb slower, climb slower. Who cares what anybody else says? It's not up to them. It's up to you and what you are comfortable with.
I agree. And the one thing I like to tell people, the one lesson I feel like society and humankind needs to learn most of all is just because we make a choice doesn't mean it's concrete and you can never change that choice. You can walk up a hill, like you're saying, and turn right to a path and go up a little ways and be like, you know what? I think I picked the wrong path because this is more grueling than where I was, and you can just cut across to the left, back to the original path, or go to a path that's on the left of that, go up a while and be like, hey, this is better, and then go, well, you know what? It's starting to feel it now, and go back to the right or go to the left, go down. I mean, there's no, the choices are never done. You can always make another choice, and that's what we forget. We think once we make our choice, that's it. And it's like, no, there is no finite on a choice.
Very, very true. Well said. Well said.
So I appreciate you coming back on, and it was great catching up with you and hearing all that you're up to. And before I get to where everyone can find you, I'm curious. I'm starting to do this with this season with all the guests. Is what is a golden nugget of wisdom that you've learned that you would like to impart on those watching the show?
I think when the golden nugget is when someone tells you you can't or you shouldn't, don't listen to them. If anyone in authority is giving you information that just doesn't feel good or right, doesn't mean you have to listen to it or agree with it. And do what you feel you need to do. Again, stand in that empowered space. And even if your legs feel wobbly, just make that first step, but just keep moving forward, even if it's just micro by micrometer, that your body and your mind and your soul knows where you need to be, and just and allow that intuition, allow yourself to go forward. It will always lead you to the right place.
I like that. And so, with that being said, where can people find you and your book? I know we mentioned Amazon earlier. Is that the best place to find it, or are there other places?
It is a great place. Of course, it's quick, but you can also go to my website and buy my book there, because then I can inscribe it and send it to you directly, which I always like personalizing it. So those are the places. I also have a Huna book out, and I have my Becoming Ridiculously Awesome on Kindle as well. So, but mainly, please go to my website and subscribe to my newsletter. You get 2 fabulous free guides. One is my iceberg of all the hidden determinants of our experiences. And I have another one. I'm trying to remember what it's called. I think it's 7 Ways to Becoming Ridiculously Awesome. So you get those free guides. I'm sending out a newsletter once a week. And actually, at the end of March, I think March 22nd, I am having a book club, my first book club ever, where we'll be going through my book. I'll be answering questions and going through it and offering additional wisdom that my book might not have. So I would love for you to be able to sign up for that. But first, sign up for my newsletter, which you can get at my website, livingyourawesome.com.
Which all the links are in the description. So, and if it's not there, I'll make sure and add it. But I gotta say, hearing all of that, how do you have the time?
Well, sometimes it takes a little longer to get these things done, but I actually have someone working with me now, just part-time, to help me do social media and actually get me more organized. Sometimes it's really hard to be organized, but once I have started getting this stuff done, it's actually kind of tumbling forward. So I'm very excited for this book club because I want people to really understand that it's not just a book to read, that they have me as a connection to help them along the way. And by the way, the book club is totally free. Just show purchase, send me an email, and then I will send you the Zoom link for the book club on March 22nd. But yeah, again, just one foot at a time, even if it's a micrometer. That's what I do every day.
That's awesome, man. That's totally becoming awesome. Love that
That's
title.
right. Thank you.
So, with that, we are going to say goodnight to everyone as it's nighttime for us. If you're in any other part of the world, make it a great day. Have a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Thank you all for watching and make it a blessed day. Enjoy, everyone. Bye bye.